Dr. Masharkar, I think this is a very comprehensive way to look at innovation that you have described. And in our class, we are discussing similar detailed aspects of it. But in your own mind, using all of this stuff, I would like you to rank a couple of countries. Because as you know, in the ranking, criteria are different. And that's why I asked this question. I find that India doesn't show up in most of the rankings I have seen. And some surprising results show up of other countries. So one of the things I want our students to do is to try to understand what different criteria people in the industry or the academics are using, and analyze the societies and try to have their own assessment of different countries. So it requires a study of the country, it requires the study of the different aspects of innovation. So I'm hoping that that will give them a hands-on experience of thinking innovation in global terms. So let me just, for example, show you some of the rankings that was done by Economist magazine that we have quoted in our class. I think all of you have a chance to see it. Let me, for our conversation, pull that out here. According to the economics ranking, and this is I think about a year-old survey, Japan ranks number 1, Switzerland ranks number 2, Finland is number 3, US shows a 4, Sweden shows a 5, then Germany, Taiwan, Netherlands, Israel the 9th, Denmark the 10th. And I think in this list of top 10, India doesn't show up. I don't even think they show up in the last 20 or 30 of them. The report that you recently discussed with me, it does not show up India either. And the reason I am focusing on India, because Dr. Masharkar knows about India in and out, as you know. So we will be able to get a very good insight from him about all these aspects. So would you be able to comment, why isn't India in all this top ranking? Or should we create a different set of criteria that the developing economies may be ranked differently? Because it is not a very good idea and it's not very motivating to find out that I am not top of the class. So we need to create very positive environment, and what do we need to do and how do we define, hey look, these are the areas that is very significant from developing countries' perspective. So how would you rank from that perspective?
Yes, rankings have their own merits and demerits. I remember there is a paper by Sir David King, who was the principal advisor to the Prime Minister of UK, principal scientific advisor. And he had published a paper in Nature where he had ranked countries as per their scientific output, basically. And India came some 68th or something like that. I did a simple thing. I actually went back to the statement that Jack Welch had made when he came to India and set up the Jack Welch R&D Center. And when the correspondents asked him, why are you here? He says, very simple, I get the highest intellectual capital per dollar here. So I asked myself, how does he calculate the highest intellectual capital? Is it scientific research papers published per dollar? Is it patents per dollar, and so on? So I created a separate table on a per dollar basis. Alright? And for simplicity, I simply said a scientific research paper per GDP per capita. Do you know who came to the top, number 1? India. Do you know who second? Who came second? China. Do you know who came third? United States of America. It depends upon the criteria that you use. You get the point. For example, you look at the R&D budget of a single company, let's say General Motors at its peak, used to be in excess of $10 billion. Entire India's R&D budget was not even $4 to $5 billion. And within that budget, India did space, defense, atomic energy, it created its own satellites, it launched even foreign satellites and so on and so forth. So I think it's the way one starts looking at these, alright? And you start rationalizing it in terms of some of these factors. Those rankings can go basically haywire. So I have my own views about that. This is number one. Number two is the way, since you asked me about India, India got its independence in 1947. That the first freedom that it had, the political freedom. But India got its second freedom in 1991, when we liberalized, opened up our economy to the rest of the world. Until 1991, reverse engineering, copying, import substitution was the buzzword. After 1991, when we opened up, we started competing with the whole world. Okay? So, I would say that India's independence began in 1991, not 1947. So you are looking at a country just in a 15 to 20 year time span, so as to say. Okay? Today we are very proud that we have created Nano, the cheapest car in the world, $2,000 car. And that car is a first to the world, not first to India. You get the point. It has actually created a paradigm shift in the entire auto industry. Alright? Now that Nano would not have happened if Ratan Tata was not allowed to do Indica. But he was not allowed to do Indica before 1991 in a protected regime. In fact, J.R.D. Tata had said, I remember in 1978, if I was allowed to make a car, I would have been as good in it as in my trucks. But he was not allowed to because there were challenges of a closed economy and the public sector. You know the basic story. So in 1991, when that freedom was given, came Indica, and because Indica came Nano. Okay? So actually one has to realize that India has begun this process of innovation late. Okay? Number two, look at drugs and pharmaceuticals as an example. What did we do? We had process patents, but no product patents. That means any new chemical molecule basically was not patentable here, but the process was patentable here. So what did we do? Anytime any new molecule was born, let us say in a laboratory abroad, we could copy it in 18 months because it was perfectly allowed under the law. And we built an extremely strong generic drug industry. The biggest, in fact, the top 5 in generic in the world are Indian companies. You know, the 6th is from outside. Now, what did generics mean? Generics meant that all that you had to do was to do chemistry research, process chemistry, process engineering. You didn't have to go through the entire process of its evaluation in animals, in humans, and so on and so forth. Alright? So as long as we are given that freedom to do so, we have no issue at all. But 1/1/2005, our laws became TRIPS compatible, trade-related aspects of intellectual property compatible. And when they became TRIPS compatible, the product patents are now allowed. What does it mean? It means the Indian drug industry now has to willy-nilly forego that license to copy, alright, and start developing their new molecules. And now they are getting breakthroughs. For example, Lupin right here in Pune, where we are sitting, has a breakthrough on tuberculosis. After 1963 rifampicin, the first new molecule has been discovered here in Pune. Why? Because they started working on it. Why were they not working on it earlier? Because there was no need to sort of do so. Laws said you can copy anything. So I think 2 points I want to make. I think the first important point is that as the background setting changes, basically liberalization, opening up, laws on TRIPS, etc., automatically the country starts doing things in a different way. So innovation has to be looked at in a particular setting. It is very contextual, basically.